Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I'm your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for OnSI every single day since August 2019, and we are continuing to move forward through yet another offseason together. As always, you can always find our 100% free 24/7 boots on the ground coverage of the Jacksonville Jaguars when you follow us on social media such as Facebook and Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. Today, we're going to talk about two players who really stood out at Jacksonville Jaguars' 11th day of training camp on Wednesday at the Miller Electric Center. Two players who they come from the same draft class, they come from the same college, Penn State's Parker Washington and Brenton Strange. Now, it's really been a theme throughout this offseason. You know, Parker Washington, even dating back to last offseason. Last offseason, Parker Washington was absolutely fantastic. He had gotten bigger. He looked more explosive. Obviously, I think when you saw him play last year, you saw him make good strides. You saw a guy who, at the very least, I think has the potential to be a very strong, in my opinion, he has number 3 receiver potential, if not above that. And he's somebody who you saw, once again, throughout this year's offseason program, just stacking days. He has a skill set that I think is, fitting with a practice setting, and it makes sense to see him kind of do as well as he does, in my opinion. But he still has to go make the plays. He still has to go out there and practice every single day and win his reps, win his one-on-ones, show up in the team drills. Just because it's practice doesn't make it, in my opinion, any less impressive. And he is a guy who, throughout, once again, another offseason program with a different team, has stood out. Through training camp, I think he's been one of the breakout guys. I was asked by a fellow writer on the beat today, who would you say are the guys who, their stock has just completely soared. They've really stood out. They are the, breakout guys of the offseason and the training camp. I had 3 names come to mind. I thought Trayvon Walker for one of them, just because I think this is the best that Trayvon has looked in a training camp setting. He's been, quite frankly, dominant. He's getting a lot of work as a pass rusher. He's showing obvious growth in leaps and bounds compared to where he was just a few years ago. And then as a run defender, he's, stonewalling guys as elite as he's always been. And then I'd also mention Jordan Lewis. Jordan Lewis is somebody who has just been absolutely lights out for the Jaguars ever since he hit the field. He's another guy, had a strong offseason program, and it's carried over directly into training camp. I mean, the interception he had on Trevor Lawrence on Tuesday. Woo! That was the kind of play where you're like, okay, this is why they signed that guy. This is why they see value in him and what he really brings to the organization, to the franchise. Not just on the field, but I also think off of it. And then my final answer, and the one who I'd put above the others, was Parker Washington. And I think it's worth noting that Washington could be, in line for a bigger role than any other number 4 receiver in the NFL, because it's clear he is the Jaguars' 4th receiver. He's not going to be in front of Travis Hunter. They signed De'Ami Brown to a 1-year, $10 million prove-it deal. He's obviously going to be one of the top 3 receivers. And then you have a complete thoroughbred in Brian Thomas Jr., who is as good as it gets and is right up there on the cusp of being one of the NFL's truly elite of the elite wide receivers. So, there's a lot of athleticism in that receiver group. There's a lot of big playability, a lot of explosiveness, whatever you want to call it. So, I don't think it's necessarily a down thing for Parker Washington to be called the number 4 receiver. And with that in mind, I think Parker will play more and produce more than most number 4 receivers. Because one, he has the versatility that they really want out of their skill players. I still, to this day, and this isn't something that I've heard from anybody in the franchise. This is just my own, little galaxy brain theory. I think a big reason they opted not to retain Christian Kirk had to do with the fact that he just, frankly, didn't fit the scheme. Kirk's entire thing throughout his career is that he is a slot receiver. He's not going to play on the outside. He doesn't have the frame. He doesn't have the catch radius. He can't beat press like that. He's just a guy who you have to play in the middle of the field. You have to play out of the slot. So I think that Parker Washington has a little bit more versatility than that. Parker, again, he's not a big guy. He's really built really similarly to Christian Kirk. But he has shown in the NFL last season that he can play on the outside, that he can find success there. So those are two reasons. Another reason I think he can be very productive as a number 4 receiver is the fact that there will be drives, probably several throughout a game, where he's the number 3 receiver. Travis Hunter will be playing defense a lot. How much? I'm not sure. If I had to venture to guess, I do think he plays a little bit less defense than he plays offense. But that doesn't mean he's not going to be playing a lot of defense, because he is. And there will be times where Travis Hunter is not on the field for the Jaguars offense, whether it's getting a breather, just came off the field with the defense, whatever you want to call it. So I am of the belief that, any time that Travis Hunter isn't on the field, that leads to more opportunities for Parker Washington. And Parker Washington, everything he has shown us so far, in my opinion, is a guy who is able to take those opportunities and run with them. He has had that good of a training camp. He made 2 plays on Wednesday. He had one really impressive route against Eric Murray. And then Trevor Lawrence, the anticipation, he got rid of the ball way before Parker ever got out of his break. Way before. And he was able to get the ball to Parker, made a diving catch in the corner of the end zone. And then Parker also had, you can find it on Jaguar social media, a really impressive contested catch against Tyson Campbell and Andrew Wingard. So really impressive day for Parker Washington, and it's really been a really impressive camp for him. That brings us to Brenton Strange. Strange is one of those guys where you don't have to think about what is his role going to be. It's very obvious. He is far and away their number 1 tight end. It's not even a question or debate. Trevor Lawrence is the most locked-in guy to his role in the team. Brian Thomas Jr., Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, Tyson Campbell probably after all of them. And then I'd say Brenton Strange in terms of just guys who are securely locked in. There are no questions about, hey, this is the guy for that position. So I think Brenton Strange is another guy who's had a really impressive training camp. Wednesday was one of his best practices. Looked really good in one-on-ones. To me, he's a much better route runner than he was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, to me, he looked maybe a little bit lumbering at times on some of these routes. You can tell that he's gotten quicker. He's still a very physical player. He has shown good hands. He fights for the ball. He gets yards after the catch. And then he made a one-handed catch against Devin Lloyd on Wednesday. That was just absolutely bonkers. Again, you can find it on their social media, but it was a great play from Brenton Strange. And he, to me, has another example of a guy who has taken advantage of the opportunities put at his feet. Evan Ingram got hurt last year. He took advantage of those. So it has been, to me, a really impressive training camp for Brenton Strange. He hasn't throttled down at all. He hasn't stalemated. He hasn't hit a wall, which I don't think anybody was wondering if he was. But first year as the number 1 tight end, what really can you do? And to me, he has been somebody who he has met the challenge, and every call, every directive, whatever you want to call it, that the Jaguars have had for him. And he is a big piece of their offense. He's clearly the most talented tight end they have. Thank you guys, as always, for listening to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. As always, my name is John Shipley, and we will find you guys next time.